Hi, welcome to Pathology Riddles. Hope our previous videos are helpful to you. We will try to go chapter wise so that it will be helpful for your exams. Today we will be discussing the topic edema. This topic will be covered in 3 videos in this week. Any guesses to what does the word edema actually mean? The word edema is coined from the Greek word oedema, which means swelling. I'm sure most of you got it right. If not, you learned it now. The definition of edema is abnormal and excessive accumulation of free fluid in the interstitial tissue spaces and serous cavities. By interstitial tissue spaces, we mean the spaces between the cells in the tissue. And serous cavities are pleural cavity, peritoneal cavity, etc. Note that the accumulation of fluid in these serous cavities are called effusion. Let's learn how the fluid accumulates in the interstitial tissue spaces. We need to go back to our concept of physiology. This is our microcirculation, the arterial end, the venous end, and the interstitial tissue spaces between the cells. Lining these vessels are endothelial cells. There are two pressures we will be dealing with. One is hydrostatic pressure and the second one is colloidal osmotic pressure. The hydrostatic pressure in the capillaries is called capillary hydrostatic pressure. The hydrostatic pressure in interstitium is called interstitial hydrostatic pressure. The colloidal osmotic pressure in the capillaries is called capillary colloidal osmotic pressure. And the colloidal osmotic pressure in interstitium is called interstitial colloidal osmotic pressure. So what is their function? The capillary hydrostatic pressure in the arterial end is higher than in the venous end. So arterial end has 32 millimeter of mercury pressure while venous end has 12 millimeter of mercury pressure. While the capillary colloidal osmotic pressure is 25 millimeter of mercury in arterial and venous ends. As the capillary hydrostatic pressure at arterial end is higher, it tends to move the fluid out of the vascular compartment into the interstitial spaces. So this force is called outward driving force. While at the venous end, the hydrostatic pressure is less, so the fluid moves from interstitium to the venous end. So this force is called inward driving force. Please note the word inward and outward are in reference to vascular compartment. The colloidal osmotic pressure in the capillaries tend to keep the fluid within the capillary. So it is called inward driving force. And the solute or the protein mainly responsible for this is albumin. While the interstitial colloidal osmotic pressure tends to keep the fluid in the interstitial tissues. As it is outside the capillary, so it is outward driving force. So at the arterial end, the fluid goes into the interstitial spaces, and at the venous end, it is drawn back into the vascular system. This is important as nutrients and oxygen to our tissue is provided by this mechanism of exchange. In normal individuals, this mechanism works in equilibrium. So there is no excessive water which remains in the interstitium. If there is minimal excess fluid in the interstitial space, it is drained by our lymphatic system and it returns to the circulation eventually. Now coming to the pathophysiology of edema. Edema or excessive fluid can accumulate in the interstitial spaces due to 5 mechanisms. These mechanisms will be taught to you in the next video on Thursday, as you need to understand these concepts well before you go into the pathogenesis of edema. Thank you for your attention. Let's meet in the next video.